Good morning, everybody. Welcome. I know we sort of like focus on family history, but then sometimes it's very nice to hear about where the people lived, what it was like when they stayed there, especially if we can see all the photos and we get a little bit of stories about what was going on in the towns. Heidelberg is very close to my heart because that is where I was born. And in December, I had the privilege to go and visit Tony. Nah? And then that whole room there behind him, you will not believe it, that is a museum. There in his picture. Okay, so I asked Tony to tell us a bit about, to do the presentation for us. And yeah, Tony knows a lot about the town. Okay, they are responsible for putting up all the blue parks in the town. He is from the Heidelberg Heritage Society. Okay, so Tony, thank you so much for speaking to us this morning, and thank you for everybody for joining us on this long weekend.
Okay, thank you, Alta. Yeah, I'm still busy with those blue plaques. We've put 70 up so far, and our target is to go over 100 within maybe in the next 2 years. Okay, this is Heidelberg, and what I'll do, I'll first start with the first people that were in the area. So we had the Bushmen, and many artifacts, Stone Age tools have been found in the mountains overlooking Heidelberg. And then the next group, okay, yes, there must have been rock art, which is now all eroded away. And there's some of the stools that have been found in the area. Then the next group of people were the Swana, the Lechoa. They had come down from East Africa, from the Tanzania area, and they settled in the area. If one goes onto Google Earth, you can actually see still ruins of them in the area. So here's a Google Earth. You can actually see here's a village. Okay, and this is actually just out on the outskirts of Heidelberg. And if you see here, also you see remnants of a British fort from the Anglo-Boer War. And here's some of this picture was taken in 1935 with some of the Swana cross. The Swana stayed in the area until Mzilikazi with his renegades. They actually came and attacked the Swanas and killed a lot of them, and then also chased a lot of them away from the area. We also had the Mantites. They also came through the area, and they also killed a lot of Swana. So in the area, when the fur trekkers came here, there was no no one staying in the area. If you see this dotted here, is actually where the Mantites, the Pretoria is over here. So actually even went close to Pretoria and went. They were actually a renegade Zulu group. So when the fur trekkers came, there was no one staying in the area. So the first fur trekkers was Hendrik Potgieter and Maritz. They logged about 10 kilometers south of Heidelberg. And here's a Google Earth picture. You see that's where the Maritz logger was. And this is the Balfour Road from Heidelberg, south of Heidelberg. And that's where the Potgieter logger is. Now they logged here, and Potgieter and Maritz left their women and children here when they actually did a raid against Mzilikazi campaign. So they went to campaign via Potchefstroom, and they chased Mzilikazi all the way to Zimbabwe. Here's a picture of Hendrik Potgieter, and this is Potgieter's lager at Lagerspoort. And you can see yes, he had his lager over here. So you can see it's within the loop of the river. So that was good for defense. And actually, just for interest sake, over here in the mountains, after I think 1906, some Chinese that escaped from the mines were captured here in the mountains. And here we have Gert Maritz. in Scheidsmiddel's lager at Blinkpoort. And his lager was over here. There was actually a ring of rocks here for many years, until about 1950. And then the farmer decided to move the rocks and pack them over here. And I was there about 2 years ago, and the farmer had taken the rocks somewhere else. Yeah. And then we have Mr. Yuckerman. But let me go before Yuckerman. The place where Heidelberg is now, it was on the farm Langlaagte, and it belonged to Mr. Stradum. And then when he died, his son and daughter-in-law, who married Mr. Fenter, inherited the farm. Now, Heinrich Yuckerman, he had come from Germany. See my notes here. He came from Germany in 1849. He settled in Pietermaritzburg as a cooper that was making wooden buckets and barrels. And he married a Miss Elizabeth Mason in 1851 after the birth of their first child. In 1858, well, just before then, they decided that there could be a smous, a hawker in the Zuid-Afrikaanse Republic. So they traveled up here to the old Transvaal. And while they were having their third son just outside of Heidelberg, okay, outside the farm of Langlaagte, he was on a hunting trip, and he saw the potential of opening up a shop on the farm Langlaagte. Reason being, it was on the crossroads between Durban and Pretoria, and Heidelberg and Potchefstroom. So he approached the owners, and he bought a piece of ground, and he started his shop. So this is actually a pencil sketch of his shop. But if you look at this one here, this is taken in 1874. You can actually see a picture of his shop there. This is actually on the corner, it was on the corner of H.F. of Wood and Yuckerman Street. And then he decided that he wanted to get more people to come in the area. So he built a couple of houses to rent out to people so they can build their own houses. And then he wanted to proclaim as a town. And he wanted to name it Heidelberg, after Heidelberg in Germany, where he studied. So his first application to Pretoria was turned down because he never had the town surveyed. So there was a Mr. Fannin a couple of years later that was traveling through town. He had come down from the Nelstroom area, and he was a surveyor. So Mr. Yuckerman got Fannin to survey the town. But 2 weeks after Fannin had actually finished, he died of malaria. He had contracted it from the Northern Transvaal. And they say that he's the first person to be buried in the cemetery. And Fannin was actually the uncle of Austin Roberts, the famous birder. So the town was proclaimed on the 23rd of June, 1866. And now to have a town be proclaimed, you have to have a magistrate. So Mr. F.K. Marie, he was the first magistrate of Heidelberg. It's actually why we've got a Marie Street named after him. And he stayed in this house, which is still standing. So we've surmised that this house was built in about 1866. And you can see there's one of our blue plaques. And I know you're talking about genealogy. I met Mr. Steenkamp, which was Mr. Marie's great-grandson. And his grandmother stayed in this house, and he was brought up in this house. Then we have the minister van Bommela, because all the towns in South Africa had churches. Mr. van Bommela, at first was a minister of the town, Schoemansdal, just outside of Louis Trichardt. That town no longer exists because of the blacks causing them trouble in all the natives in that time. So he was married to Josina, and Josina drew some pictures of the church there at Schoemansdal. So they came to Heidelberg, and they built this church here. So this church was built in 1865. So it was a year before the town was proclaimed. Mr. Eukerman did most of the financing. And then later, Minister van Wamela tried to unite the Hervormde Church and the Hervormde Church into one church. And they built this church. They couldn't decide on the name, so they said it was the Hervormde or the Hervormde Church. So this Klipkerk was built in 1890. And just afterwards, after that was built, that church was demolished. It's now a parking lot. You see another picture of the old church. And here across the road, well, the HF of Wood Street runs down here. And across the road, they call the Market Square, where the town hall is now at the moment. Also here was where the pastory or the minister stayed. But the minister died. Okay, he died in about 1895, and he couldn't get the churches to unite. So the Hervormdes built their own church, which we'll come to just now, and his wife refused to move from that pastory, stating that no, that was the Hervormdes. So they had to build a new church, a new pastory for the new minister. So Minister Lowe. So that's a picture of Van Wamela. That was his second wife. Okay, that's of the family. Here's a picture of Dietlof. He actually wrote a book on the Anglo-Boer War. And we have Joanna, Van Wamela, Willem, Joanna. Okay, one of them is Joanna. She's known, she married Mr. Blunt, Joanna Blunt, and she wrote a book, the Petticoat Commanders during the Anglo-Boer War. Okay, here's a more recent picture of the Klipkerk. The back view of the church. It's inside. This pulpit inside is not the original pulpit. Here's the original pulpit, which is actually at the local high school. And in 1909, the tower collapsed. Minister Lowe and some elders went into the tower, inspecting some cracks, and then they went home for lunch. And while they were having lunch, they heard a commotion. And they said, oh, Dalfal die toren. They put it down to a couple of days of rain and bad workmanship. So here's a picture of Joanna Blunt during the Anglo-Boer War. And here's a later picture of her. I think she's buried in Cape Town. The picture of Dietlof van Wamela. Then we have Minister Lowe and his family, who was a minister after Van Wamela. And they had to build this house, especially for him, because Mrs. Van Wamela didn't want to move from the house. This was built in about 1895. Everything was imported from the UK because nothing was made at that time in South Africa. So here's a more recent picture. And across the road was Dr. Archie Visser's house. And Dr. Archie Visser and Minister Lowe, they became friends. There's a bust of Dr. Archie Visser. So Dr. Okefisa, I think it's his second wife. Yeah. Actually, it could be his first wife, because when they came to Heidelberg, his first wife died, and so in the cemetery is Angel Tuletti. And as I said, Dr. Okefisa was friends with Minister Lowe, and one time Charlotte, the minister's daughter, came and brought roses to Dr. Okefisa's wife that was sick. So Okefisa wrote a poem on a serviette for Charlotte. You know, what's Lieve Tannie oorsprong is quite a well-known poem. Here we have the Hervormde Church. Here's the actual first church that was built in about 1898. Remember, I said they want Van Bommel tried to unite the two churches, and the Hervormdes didn't want to join. Well, there was a group that didn't want to join, so they built their own church. Next door was the pastory, which has since been demolished. So, and Van Balcom, he was the minister of the Hervormde Church. So this is a picture of it, how it looks today. I think it was built about 1924, and it was designed by Gerrit Moerdijk. Now, Gerrit Moerdijk was also the architect that designed the Voortrekker Monument. So the old church, which is still standing, became the Van Balcom Saal in honor of their minister. Yeah, and then across the road, we have the Anglican Church, also built about 1888, which is still standing. At the back is actually a hall, and that was actually used as a classroom, first for the law fall school, and then later on for the teachers training college. And here's the pastory where the minister stayed. In 1838, there was a minister, Noel Roberts, who was the brother of Austin Roberts. And Noel Roberts actually wrote a book on Heidelberg, which was never published. I've got a copy of it. There's a back of the church. And here's the pastory next door. And this is that hall behind the church. If you look at this picture, 1888, you can actually see the clip cakers there. Now we've got the old jail that they say this was also built in 1888, but it's not here. So there's a bit of a discrepancy between the dates, maybe one or 2 years. There's a bit of a blow up of the Anglican Church. Now, during the Anglo-Boer War, the church was known as the Soldiers' Church because many of the British soldiers that went to the church reminded them of home. This is the inside of the church as it looks to this day. There was a Major Valentine. He was in charge of, let me just drink some water. He was in charge of the Valentine Heidelberg volunteers. They were the Boers that actually went over now onto the British side. And so he was in charge of them. And the Heidelberg volunteers were not particularly liked by the Boers. And if a Boer had come across one of them, they would have shot them straight away. So Major Valentine died outside between Ermelo, sorry about that, between Ermelo and Standerton. They died in a battle there at Onverwacht, January 4th, 1902. A picture of Captain, well, Captain became a major. And this is where his offices were, okay? It's been converted into a house. So you can actually see that building. They dated that the house was built about 1867 because in the walls they found an old newspaper dating 1867. Valentine's Heidelberg Volunteers. This picture was taken in front of the old jail, which is still standing. Inside the Anglican Church, there's a couple of stained windows. Okay, that earlier plaque that I showed you, the brass plaque, was ordered from the UK, but they actually went through to China first, and they received this glass stained window, so they decided to keep it, and they actually changed the bottom there, making it to do with the Second Anglo-Boer War. Here's another one that was 1897, okay, to commemorate the Jubilee of Queen Victoria. The English community of Heidelberg donated actually two of these glass stained windows, one to the Anglican Church and one to the Methodist Church. Here's the Methodist Church at the moment. Actually, no, they see changed colors now. That's how it is as it is today. So this church was built in 1895, but it was only the first section that was built in 1895. After the Anglo-Boer War, they built on the T section, because there were more English people coming to Heidelberg, and also particularly that the Presbyterians also came to the Methodist Church because they didn't have their own church. The only problem is in 1905, the Presbyterians did build their own church, so half the congregation left. So they decided to put a partition inside the church and use the back part for the Sunday school. So here we got a picture of Heidelberg, 1895. You can see here there's a water tank at the back. So they had running water. And then here is the pump house that pumped water to the tank. Here you see a picture blown of the Methodist Church without the T section. Harry Reekley, he was a lay preacher in the Methodist Church. I think he died about 1945. He was also the editor of the Heidelberg Times, or the Heidelberg News. I came across this Heidelberg News in 1896. The war is over. It was actually after the Jameson raid. I don't think they realized that in a couple of years' time, there was going to be a 3-year war. That was the Second Anglo-Boer War. Here we have Harry Reekley, some of the ministers and elders of the Methodist Church. This was taken about 1920, inside the Methodist Church. This is Harry Reekley's house. There's houses in Prentice Street. And his printing works were on the property behind. So when he went to work, he had to just go down a path, cross a little straight, and then he was at work. We also have the Burden Missionary Church, which I think is actually the oldest church still standing. We had Missionary Duran. He came to Heidelberg and he opened up the church in the black area of Heidelberg in Spruit Street. And he actually got two groups of blacks, from a group from the Alpes River and a group from the Vaal River. And they came to his church and stayed in Heidelberg. But the white community didn't like the idea that there were too many black people in town, and they complained. So he obtained funding from Germany, and he bought a farm about 20 kilometers out of Heidelberg, and he built a church there. Okay, this is the picture of it, how the church looks now today. It's owned by the Lutheran Church, and they have services like once a month. Inside the church is an old trap oral. I was at the service when I put up the blue plaque there on their church, and someone was playing the trap oral. The picture that I found inside the church with the trap oral there in the background. It's a recent picture of the church. At the time, Minister During, he was also a carpenter. So he also designed a lot of or made a lot of the benches and the pulpits. But these are not all the ones that he built. Here's the church that's at Farm Rietspreid. They renamed it Wyerton. It was built in 1892. So this is a recent picture of it. So it's not been used. The inside of it. And in 1961, because the Group Areas Act, they didn't want, the area was proclaimed white. So they confiscated, the government confiscated the ground, and they sent all the black people, well, they were actually like a big village there. And the people were moved to Mamelodi and to Soweto. And they sold the farm to a farmer, and he actually opened up the big door in it and used the church as a barn. This is a cornerstone of it, 1892. So that's when the church was built. Even during the Anglo-Boer War, the British burnt the church down. So they rebuilt it after the Anglo-Boer War. This is the house next door. So this is where the minister must have stayed. And they also had a church. So this is not a church, a school. So this is what's left over of the school. But there is a provincial school there on the property, which they teach in Zulu, and is now known as Kudung. It's a part of the village, so that there's still ruins of the houses of the village in the area. But just to come back, in 2011, the ground was given back to 130 families that were relocated. But the problem is the families won't move back here because they're all settled where they are. This is a Google Earth of it. You can see all the houses. Basically the ruins of the houses. The church is over here somewhere. No, the church is over here by the tree there. Here's the Methodist, the Presbyterian Church, built in 1905. After the Anglo-Boer War, the British government said to the English community that they will donate a piece of ground as long as they build a church within 1 year. So the Presbyterians grabbed the opportunity and they built the church in 1 year. This is the inside of the church. Here we have the original first magistrates court of Heidelberg. I take it that Mr. Marie was the magistrate here. And this is actually also where the government sat in 1880. A couple of years earlier, the British had annexed Pretoria, and the Boers had met at Paardekraal in 1880, and they decided they're going to fight the British government. And they came through to Heidelberg, and they declared Heidelberg, the public, were raising up the fee clear on Market Square. It's also interesting, the story, that the clerk of the court wouldn't hand over the keys now to the Boers, but he did leave the key in the door for the Boers to go in. So this is so the government was run by Paul Kruger, Piet Joubert, and Martinus Pretorius. Yes, this is Eukerman Street, named after the founder of Heidelberg. So we have here the old magistrates court. We have the shop of Mr. Yuckerman. We have the old post office. And here we have the Standard Bank. So the Standard Bank was built about 1895. So that building was demolished and they built this building in 1949. Then when you have a Mr. Killian, he was very well known in Heidelberg. He had a farm near the Vaal Dam, and he fought in the Mapuch Wars, First Anglo-Boer War and Second Anglo-Boer War. I think he was a bit too old to fight in the First World War, and he died in his 90s. During the Second Anglo-Boer War, he had damaged his shoulder, and he built a special stick so that he can still carry on fighting. A picture of the British occupation. This is Market Square here. You see the Magistrates Court. You notice also that first church has been demolished. And then we have General Piet Viljoen. He was charged of Heidelberg just before the British took over Heidelberg. General Hart had come in with his British forces from the east of Heidelberg, from Nigel side, and they sent in around a cannon round into Heidelberg, just missing the Klipkak. And so General Piet Viljoen went out of Heidelberg with a white flag, and they had a truce that the British won't attack as long as the Boers left by 12 o'clock that evening. So just before 12 o'clock, there were a lot of explosions with the Boers blowing up their ammunition, and they left Heidelberg. And a picture of Major General Hart. And we have Dr. O'Reilly. He was the district surgeon, came to Heidelberg in 1888. And okay, there's a picture of Dr. O'Reilly, and there's Walter Harvey. They were good friends, and their wives. He would go around to the farms in a black spider horse and carriage. He would take a pigeon with him, and he would leave the pigeon on the farm. And every time the farmer needed him, they would release the pigeon, and he would know what farm to go and visit. He stayed in this house, which is still standing. We've put a blue plaque on it already. This is a picture of it, how it looks today. Now, during the Anglo-Boer War, next to Dr. O'Reilly's house was the Waverley Hotel. Okay. They converted it into a hospital, and Dr. O'Reilly was in charge of the hospital together with his wife. There was a General Cooper that he befriended, okay, and General Cooper would come and visit and play tennis on his tennis court. And one day General Cooper remarked that the doctor's house was better than his house in the barracks. And so 2 weeks later, Dr. O'Reilly was arrested. He was sent to Cape Town. 3 months later, his wife was sent to the concentration camp in Meerwent in Durban. The reason being, they suspected that he was sending messages to the Boers. And then also Dr. O'Reilly refused to sign the sovereignty over to the British government. Eventually, Dr. O'Reilly went to the Meerwent concentration camp, and he became the doctor of the camp. This building has been demolished. After the war, it was renamed the Coronation Hotel. It was an old age home. It became a hostel for the Law Fall School, and it's now demolished. There's actually a gym there now. And we have the story of Veldkornet Salman van As. He was executed behind the old jail. During the Anglo-Boer War, there was a Captain Mees of the Somersets that was going around to the Boer lines with a white flag and convincing Boers now to come over to the British side. But Van As was ordered, now go and find this guy, capture him, he's causing a lot of trouble. So they met outside of Heidelberg, just past that missionary church. And Captain Mees came along riding on a horse with a white flag. And he came up to the Boer lines and they speaking to Van As. And Van As told him that told Captain Mees that he wasn't to leave. He was now his prisoner. So Captain Mees took out his revolver, but Van As was quicker with his rifle and shot me off his horse. So at the peace treaty of Vereeniging, Van As was excluded from the peace treaties, saying that he had committed murder by shooting an officer with a white flag. So they held a court case in Heidelberg after the war. It was a couple of days after the war. And they actually held the court case in that Waverley Hotel that was the hospital. And he was found guilty. The next day, he was at sunrise, he was taken to the old jail and he was executed. After executing, they buried him in the corner of the property. A couple of months later, his father received a letter from the Crown government stating that it was a mistrial, and because he wasn't allowed to defend himself, and they offered compensation, which his father said, no, money won't bring my son back. I do believe that the court case was done by the Somersets. Captain Mees was part of the Somersets. So I feel it was more of a revenge than a proper court. Here we have a picture of Van As. This was taken on the 5th of the 6th, 1902, when the Boers laid their arms down after the war. Here we have a picture of Piet Viljoen. Piet Viljoen's son started a lawyer practice here in Heidelberg, Viljoen and Meek, which is still operational. Here we have the old jail, built in 1888. This is the back wall. And this is actually where Falconet van As was executed. There's 3 bullet holes. The bullets went through his heart. This is some pictures. This is the women's section of the old jail. In those days, they didn't have flush toilets. So here's still the old bucket toilet. The jail was used until 1963. Here we have some pictures of the concentration camps during the Anglo-Boer War. You can see all the tents over here. What's interesting with this picture, there's 2 rows of mud huts that some of the women and children stayed in, which was preferable than the tents, specifically during winter when it was very cold. This is now of the cemetery where the women and children are buried. They died in the concentration camp. We also have the native concentration camp cemetery, which people don't know about. See, here we have the white concentration camp cemetery. Okay. And we also have the old location of the black people, which is now the hockey grounds of the high school. And there's also a cemetery here as well. You see, here's now the mall, the Heidelberg Mall. This is the Nigel Road. And you can see here is where the cemetery, the black concentration camp cemetery is. It's over here. People drive past not knowing, But also there's possibility that the cemetery actually extended over the N3, and maybe half of it was actually graded away when they built the N3, because there was supposed to be over 400 people buried there. Here's some pictures of that cemetery that I've taken. This now is that cemetery here, the native cemetery here. And this is what they call the Blinkpoort Road. And on top here, we've got the Nigel Road. One can't really make it out as a cemetery. And also there's no headstones. I think in those days, maybe the blacks couldn't really write. So there's nothing on the headstones. Or unless there was some writing, and it's all been eroded away. Also during the Anglo-Boer War, we had block houses. You can actually see during the occupation, all these tents around. So there's a lot of British soldiers also living in the tents. You can also see there's a blockhouse here above Heidelberg. There's actually a cross and there's some water towers there now. There's another blockhouse over here. So that blockhouse there, that's a picture of it, taken after the Anglo-Boer War. Also, north of Heidelberg, you had Fort Coley, which is a group of 3 blockhouses. And you can see there's actually this one blockhouse, there's actually a rock wall around the place. I was actually going on Google Earth, and I was very curious to see what the structure was. So I took a hike, jumping the fence of the Suikerbosrand Nature Reserve, and I came across the blockhouses. So these pictures I took about a year ago. You can see they've even carved in the rock. There's Prince Alfred's, Somerset Light Infantry, 1901. We have the Somerset's E Company. So they must have had roofs on high. They were high at one stage with roofs on. And then also on the other side of Heidelberg, above the shooting range, we have Dublin Hill, which was actually a fort. We had rice blockhouses, and there's a gun emplacement facing towards Nigel. So this is that gun emplacement. This is part of that rock wall. This is now on army property. I wrote a letter to their colonel asking permission. 2 letters actually, in fact, and they didn't reply. So I trespassed taking these pictures. This is where one of the rice blockhouses were. You can see Heidelberg in the background. There's the N3 freeway that goes towards Durban. And we have the town hall, built in 1939, also designed by Gerard Moedijk. This ball was donated by the Italian prisoners of war after the Anglo-Boer War. A lot of the Italian prisoners of war were contracted out to a lot of farmers in the area. And together with the local trade school, they built the globe. One of Gerard Moedijk's things is the buffalo, because on the Voortrekker monument is also the buffalo, which represents the most dangerous animal in Africa. We have the coat of arms of Heidelberg, which is no longer valid. But if you see, they've got the castle, which donates the castle in Germany, in Heidelberg in Germany. We also used to have a monument in front of the town hall, to Heidelberg being the capital. And so we had a bust of Paul Kruger, Piet Joubert, and Martinus Pretorius. Paul Kruger was stolen, so the town council took everything down, and they now lay at the municipal buildings in one of their storerooms. The interior, this is an older picture of it. It's a bit, the place is deteriorating. And here, up top here, we've got actually forests of vegetation growing there at the moment. So this picture must have been taken about 30 years ago. Older picture of Heidelberg, you can see the town hall to the right. Also the town hall. Heidelberg at one stage had 15 hotels and 35 drinking places, particularly after gold was discovered in 1895. So here we have the President Hotel, which was renamed the Grand Hotel, which I take it maybe after Paul Kruger had passed away or after the Anglo-Boer War. And that hotel was demolished, and we got this in its place, which has been empty for a couple of years. This is another hotel, which I don't know the name of, but the picture was donating the first car in Heidelberg. We had the Transvaal Hotel. As you came into Heidelberg, it was demolished to make a way for the police barracks in Heidelberg, which is now the police station. So the building is still standing. We also had here the South African Constabulary campsite, which is now a built-up area, is known as Overcray. And this picture was taken there of the blacks that were fighting for the British. They were more in charge of burning the farmhouses down and manning blockhouses. Now, just outside of Overcray, is a block of stairs, which originally was the military hospital at that site. Thinking about, they actually sold all the buildings off in about 1910, and it became a golf course. Got no pictures of the golf course, but on a map I came across this donating that there's a golf course there. So we had the Grand Hotel, and we also had the Central Hotel. We had the Royal Hotel, where that Royal Hotel has been demolished, and we now have the old Mutual building. We also have these banks. It was a Natal Bank, it became Barclays Bank, and then First National Bank, and now it's the supermarket. This bank was the Standard Bank. With all the years, it's been used as a Standard Bank, but now it's the interior designs company. Next door here, we have a bottle store. At one stage, there was a hairdresser, and also ABSA took over the building at one stage. So all the picture of the three banks. So this picture must have been taken about 2005, because now all these banks have actually moved now to the mall. Outside of town, we have the farm De Rust. It was built by Frederick Bezuidenhout, the son of Frederick Bezuidenhout from Bears Valley. So this was built about 1906. Also, everything was imported except for the bricks, and the bricks were actually made by Vereniging Brick and Tile, which belonged to Sammy Marks. You can see that they had the colors of the fee clear in the entrance, and if one goes inside, okay, all the tiles inside were all imported from Italy. All the fireplaces were imported from the UK. They're all made from cherry wood. See, this one also cherry wood, but which has been painted. You can see the ceilings, all imported. Also in the passage, I don't think I've got a picture of the passage. There's a alcove, And on top of the alcove, they see a key embossed into the concrete work. And that was donated that he was a Freemason. And this is the dining room. I was in this house about 6 months ago. It's empty. All the furniture had been taken out. This is the shed, which they believe that was actually built before the house. So this is Frederick and his wife Judith that lived in Bears Valley. They actually owned Doornfontein, Braamfontein, and Turfontein. So they made money by selling their land to the miners when gold was discovered. So this is okay. That's the first generation Frederick was saying that. This is Frederick that built the rest, and in his will, he stated that the eldest of each son must inherit the property. So this is the next son that inherited, but the problem is his son. He never had sons. He had 2 daughters. So his eldest daughter inherited the property, and she married a Mr. Minor. This is a picture of their wedding day. And this is a picture of Lydia Minor. I spoke to her about a month ago. She's about 94 years old. Her son, Philip Minor, will be inheriting the place, although he's trying to sell it. Philip now is about in his 50s. At the rest, there's a cemetery there, beside the notes. So many of the generations have been buried here. We have the Heidelberg station, built in 1895. Originally, when they decided to build the railway line was supposed to go straight. Okay, but the people of Heidelberg complained that it's too far for them from the town, so they end up building this extra loop, building the station over here. A picture of while they were busy building it. This building is no longer here, only the station is there. It became a transport museum, and Anton Rupert took all his cars down to sell, well, not to Francis Hook, and now there's this restaurant and brewery there. If one sees here, there were a number of different tracks. At the moment, there's only 2 tracks, and if you've been to this old station, the old goods sheds will move closer to the station. So this picture was taken in 1905. You see the station in the background. This is during the Anglo-Boer War. Here in front, we have a step gable. But then at the back, we have a different type of gable. Here next door, this was added on as where the station master stayed, and then it became a restaurant. So one of the fireplaces in the station. This train is one of the exhibits at the station. So they call it the Heidelberg Heritage Museum, but they've only really got the coach, the train coaches and the locomotive on display. Here we have the Heidelberg Public School. It was built about in the 1892, I think, which caught on fire. They actually built prefabs for the students, and those were also caught on fire. So the school was moved to a suburb of Heidelberg, Gauteng Park, in 1974. The only thing that's still remaining is the rock wall in front. So they taught in Dutch, and they would have a 2-hour lesson in English. Mr. Christie was a headmaster at one stage. I think this must have been 1920s. We have a Mr. Bowers. He was a teacher in 1883. They found him hanging. He hung himself. He committed suicide in one of the classrooms. They broke down the door and found him hanging from the beams, and there was a note stating "Die duivelse kinders." So it looks like the children were giving him a hard time. Mr. Dongus, he also became the headmaster just before the Anglo-Boer War. And this picture taken in 1894 of the children. This is a picture taken about 1960s. You can actually see the school over there. Some of the walls were falling down, so me and some guys, went and repaired them. And that's all after we repaired it. Yeah, here we had a traffic training center that was made there, but the grass and the weeds are so high that it can't be used anymore. So in 1974, this is the unveiling of the start of the new school, and the bell there is still the original bell from the school. So this is how the school looks to this day. Then we have the Lawful School, built in 1907. After the Anglo-Boer War, the British government stated that all government schools had to be taught in English, and the Boers didn't like that idea. So there were also a lot of orphans after the Anglo-Boer War that needed to be schooled, and they started a school in the cellar of the Klipkerk. So that's actually where the first classroom was of the Lawful School, bottom of the church. And then these are the people that donated money to build the new school. The Frederick Besaidenout from the Rest, his brother-in-law, and his brother donated money. So there on the school, we have this plaque. So this is when they load the cornerstone of the full school in 1906. So it was inaugurated in 1907. This is also, while they were busy building it, the front steps. It's 11th of January is when they inaugurated the building. Interesting enough, the hall here in front is known as Monument Hall because there's a list of Boers that died during the Anglo-Boer War. And Mr. Dongus from the public school, he became the first headmaster. He was first inspector of schools, but they convinced him to become the headmaster of the fall school. And he later on became dean of the Teachers Training College in Heidelberg. So this is the colors of the school at the moment. And it's been declared a national monument, although I don't know if it's still valid with the New South Africa. There's a list of the Boers that died during the Anglo War. You can see there's a Eukerman A. Alfred Eukerman was the grandson of the founder of Heidelberg. This is when we put up the blue plaque and you get the headmaster, head boy, and head girl. So this is the normal teachers training college, which still exists in Heidelberg. but it was taken over by the South African Army. So you see Mr. Dongas, he was also the Dean of the Teachers Training College. When he retired, well, sorry, after him being the Dean, he became a senator, and he sat in the government in Pretoria. So even the old bottle store was used as a classroom while they were busy building the school. These buildings are still standing. I think this building is known as Dongas building. So you can see the old picture. This was before, I think 1966 is when the army base took over. So now we've got the South African Army Gymnasium. So the overhead picture. And next door, we have the Heidelberg High School. This picture was taken in 1935, but the high school actually started in 1915. Mr. Lowe, he was the headmaster of both the Volkschool, Lower Volkschool, and the high school. And when the school was moved over here to in the 1920s, he became the headmaster. So, okay, so the school was built in 1919. But was officially opened in 1922. That's how the school looks to this day. Inside the school, there's two busts of Mr. Lowe. You see Mr. Lowe together with some of the teachers. This is the Yule in 1910 in Voortrekker Street, which was previously known as Market Street. Also, there were 3 hostels that have been since demolished. We have Concordia, Excelsior, and Transvalia. I don't know why they demolished such lovely buildings. And you can actually see here, you have the Teachers Training College, the high school, and 1, 2, 3 hostels. Now, the hostels actually belong to the Enke Church, and they donated it to the education department, and the education department demolished them. But in this place here where that hostel is now, we've got a library there now. There's a picture taken recently. You can see there's one of our blue plaques. Also, you can see where the old building and they extended it. They didn't get the mix of bricks right. And to me, this is amazing. This big piece of sandstone carved into that shape. And also in the area that's gone by, bicycles. I don't see children going to school by bicycle anymore. And there at the back of the school is the original pulpit of the Klipkerk. This is when we unveiled the blue plaque. We have the headmaster and the deputy headmaster. These are people that sponsors the plaque. Okay, and then here we have the municipality buildings now, more modern. We have the Victorian Centre. We have the Heidelberg Mall, and we have a McDonald's. Thank you. That's the end of my presentation.
Tony, thank you very much. I took a great interest in your talk because I got close links to the other Heidelberg in the Western Cape. Okay. I see your Heidelberg is about 11 years old, younger, but obviously much bigger now. Just a question on your photos. Are those photos somewhere displayed in a local museum, or where would one have access to those photos?
Okay, if you go onto our Facebook page, Heidelberg Heritage Association. Most of the pictures are on there. As I've been putting blue plaques up, I put a post on the Facebook page. And then I put a lot of photos there as well.
It's a related question. Do you have names of the persons on the photos, specifically the photos related to the Valentine volunteers and the Boer officers after the war, and perhaps some of the school teachers and so forth?
I've got the names of those Heidelberg volunteers and of the Boers that surrendered. I've got those, but of the teachers, not really.
Tony, perhaps you saw that my grandparents visit the gelofte terrein very often in those days, and my mother told me about it, and she is born in 1940. So as a small daughter, she attends those celebrations, meetings, whatever you do. Do you know where that area is?
Yes, I was actually lost there 16 December 2022. I was there as well. It's just outside of Heidelberg. It's on the farm Kafferskraal. And interestingly, there's actually a grave there that was of a Mr. Stradom. He donated that farm to the Feast Committee on the condition that every year they hold a feast there in honor of the 16th of December.
Tony, I found that talk fascinating. I love hearing all about Heidelberg, and I have a fairly distant connection to Heidelberg in that my dad's grandfather's brother was Andries Maurits Mostert, who had a farm just outside of Heidelberg called, initially it was called Welgelegen. And, you know, when I first came to South Africa, I didn't know how to say it. So I used to call it Welgelegen.
Okay. Yeah,
but now I know it's Welgelegen. And previously it was called Rietbelt as well. And I particularly wondered if you know, pardon me, of any of the names of the children in those photographs that you have of the young school children.
No, I've got the names of the young school children.
Okay. All right. And
now,
so,
yes.
And those photographs, did you get them out of the National Archives in Pretoria?
Basically from a magazine, and I'm actually not really sure what got them, but they were there. There's a magazine about the schools in Heidelberg that I got a lot of the photos from as well. But interesting, Welgelegen is still there. It's a mansion there. It's a boutique hotel now.
I know.
A.M. Mostert is buried in a mausoleum just next to the house.
And the mausoleum was also designed by Moerdijk.
That's right. And Welgelegen was designed by Sir Herbert Baker.
Correct. Yeah, I've got a lot of memorabilia from the farm. And my granddad, as a student at Stellenbosch, planted, his job was in the school holidays or the varsity holidays, was to plant the oak trees which line the driveway.
Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, he had jolly broad shoulders at the end of that holiday.
Mm-hmm.
And then my last question was about your background in Rhodesia, because I'm also from there, and I wanted to know whereabouts you come from.
Okay, born in Salisbury, Lady Chandler House. Got a picture of my mother on the balcony looking down. And basically came to South Africa in 1969, and I traveled all over. But the schools I went to there were Green Grove, and Braeside High, and Avondale Junior School.
Oh, mushy. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much, Tony. I'm glad you were feeling well enough to do the presentation today, because I was worried the other night when we did it. We didn't look so lekker, but you're looking much better.
But I've still got a cough though.
Yeah, nee, maar ek is
Okay.
bly jy word beter. Thank you
Yeah,
everybody for joining. Tony, I will contact you again, and thank you for your time and